I was gonna ask you guys because you're both in right, creating comics now. I was reading this like I guess it's like a sort of a how-to on how to make comics by Will Eisner.
Yeah.
The Eisner Awards are named after, and it's obviously a very old book that they've sort of reprinted recently, right?
Yeah.
And it
Right.
was sort of before, I guess, films were as prevalent as they were. It was sort of like the 50s, written in the 50s or early 60s, and
Yeah.
his compositions were, you know, out the gate. I mean, they're very, I don't know how to describe them, but what I was going to ask you guys was how much do you think sort of film influences your comic book creation, and in what ways? How sort of meditate on that a little bit.
Well, for me, I actually think film is quite influential because, like I said, the comic is based on my love for Mad Max and bad post-apocalyptic movies. And I also think of my shots as if I was a cameraman.
Right.
Get crazy creative like Eisner, where he'd put the titles into the buildings and stuff like that. My shots are a wee bit more. First of all, I try and make it very easy to follow. So it is. Most of them are just normal panel to panel sort of sequences. So it's almost a storyboard. I try and do variety in the shots, like the close-ups, wide shots. I do usually start a scene if it's in a new area with a wide shot because it's establishing shot, which is pretty much a movie trick.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do have a few crazy layouts in there, which you can only do with a comic. But I think movies and comics tie together quite well because they're both just storytelling.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, it's hard to describe some of the compositions. I would say there are a lot more kind of. I'm trying to madly find like an example of what I'm talking about here, but I'm wildly unprepared. Here's one here, I think. Yeah, I'll chuck this in the chat. There's a Google image search, but I don't know how you would describe how to articulate it, but it's there's a lot more sort of fluidity, you know what I mean? It's like, because I'm the same, Shane. I think of myself as a cameraman, and sort of, I think of it sort of like a movie, But I was looking at his compositions, going, this guy obviously has a completely different sort of media diet. He's obviously reading more, books and comic books, and it's sort of impacted his compositions, and it's a lot more kind of almost like a storybook, it looks very much kind of sort of sketchbooky, kind of, the panels sort of bleed into one another, and there's not as many, there are gutters, but there's not as many sort of hard gutters, cordoning everything off. So
he was quite experimental for at the time, so
right. Okay.
He was trying to make it into an art form. So that's the thing. You don't stick to the safe panel to panel if you're trying to make it into an art form.
Yeah.
I mean, you could look at someone like David Mack in that way too, or even Dave McKean, where half the time it's sequential, but there's other pages that are he's just going for the feeling of the story.
Right.
Like he'll do some abstract art, some blurry photo with scribbles all over it, put some text to it, and he goes, that will feel right for that page. Like
interesting.
But yeah, David Mack is pretty crazy in his old stuff with his layouts. It's definitely not something you could easily do on film.
Yeah, I was sort of trying to, like, whenever I'm looking at a comic or a film, I'm always trying to sort of break it down and sort of kind of at least casually try to sort of see how they might have approached it, And I was looking at this going, man, it's incredible. It's an absolutely incredible work. But it's like, I don't even know kind of how you kind of begin to sort of think about this composition pragmatically, I was going to ask you, Aru, as well, like because you're a writer, and you mentioned that you do a little bit about the sort of the concept stuff,
Yeah,
character
well,
wise.
I mean, like,
Do you
for
do
me,
storyboards at all for your artists, or do you leave
no,
it sort of up to them?
I describe what I want, and then I send them images and say, hey, this is what the character looks like. This is what I'm thinking. I'll send them like Googled images of ships, and I want like especially when I'm doing the Robot Nation, I'll go this, but then also I'll create weapons, right? Because I'm designing characters, so I want to design weapons for those
Right.
characters from scratch. Like I'll try to make it practical. I'll get like a Nerf gun,
But
and I'll build on
you're
them.
basically doing the research for them.
That's
So
it.
this is the type of
Right.
boat it's meant to be. This is
Yeah.
the type of gun he's meant to have. Now
Yeah.
draw it yourself.
Yeah, and that's it. Like that. Like I spend a lot of time researching everything, because if I can make it easier for the artist, I will. Because I know,
Right.
like, if I'll spend like about 60% out of the 40% of my time just researching.
So do you let them alter?
Oh, hell yeah.
Stuff? Yes.
And that's the thing. Like I won't, like, if you look at some stuff, let me show you this one here. Like so here's something that's very new for us. It's issue 2 of Robot Nation. Let me bring this up. So I let my artists create these characters, right? So I said I wanted a robot dog, and he goes and gives me this character, and for the sci-fi in space mothership thing, and he creates Ruth, who's the main lead female character for this story, right? So this is Ruth and Fang, who's the thing here, and so you look at it. This is his concept of my just saying, I want a female in space, and this is what you can do.
Right.
I didn't say put this arm piece here. I didn't say put this leg piece here. Didn't say put this around here and all that. It's his imagination bringing to this, because this is a guy who knows his skill set. And so after having done first issue with him, he's going to pop out and do this. So this is, if you look at this, right, there's another, and I'm going to bring up, I did a different version of that, a bit more, he did a, I think he did a new version. He said, hey, like, I had a look at it, and I think this is a better one. Here we go. I've changed the characters around a bit, of the same character. And it's quite, because you said it was European, so I'm going to do it like a European character.
Right.
Excuse me, hit the wrong button. And so I'm not going to stop him. He's an amazing artist. So why would I in my idiotic brain would go, I'm going to stop the artist from being creative, right? So if you notice that he's done a bit of slight changes compared to the other one, but it's the same character. Now, however, when I go to design characters, I will, because I want to make life easy for myself. I'm the guy who goes, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Create the wheel, but don't reinvent it. So one of the part of that thing is this. So let me bring up Fang. So what I'll do, I will bring up stuff like, I'll give him a photo, right? So I'm going to bring this up and I'll show you. So if I want a character, and he's done the same, right, for one of our characters, Red Dot. So it's easier to get visuals of a person in existence compared to someone who's not. So for me, I'll just go, I want Jerry to look like this. That doesn't mean do it exact, and he knows that, because I want your interpretations of this character looking like this.
Right.
Because sometimes when I'm thinking in my head, I want a rugged looking dude, or I want a more genteel looking female, or a more strong looking female. Or same thing with the male, right? There's certain things you want to give out there. So, and it's when I'm thinking about it, I'm not going to go, hey, I want exact for exact. I want your interpretation of what you see when you read my comic book to put out. And that allows for freedom. So when he was doing Red Dot, you had what's his name?
Henry Rollins.
Henry Rollins, right?
Yeah, you thought of a different actor, and then when you described him to me, I for some reason Henry Rollins and Clint Eastwood and someone else came into my head, and I think we went with the Henry Rollins one for the overall look, just because of his square jaw and no neck.
Yeah, so if you
he's a big boy. Yeah,
it's probably better if I put a visual of him, because like, and then when we had an art student reach out to us, Kiwi art student reach out to us and say, hey, to me, and say, hey, I would like to do a because I've got this.
You need the young ones of them.
Yeah. So, he said, like, I've got a project I've got to do for school, and where's a young one of them? This one, right?
Maybe.
Right. So when he goes to me, like, he goes, you know what? I want to do something because you're doing a comic book, and it's like, I would like to do your Red Dot, and went to the wrong one. There we go. And he goes, what what does he look like? I said, well, Shane based him off Henry Rollins and Clint Eastwood and all that. So I just said, here you go. And and then he, Andrew is what his name is. He then went and if I can get it right, on the right one with his millions of friggin' files. He was in the Korean correction. No, he was on the offensive, I think. So he actually did. There we go. Andrew Harris, Kiwi artist. He went and did this interpretation, right? And which is going to be on a cover once we get issue 1 out there. And you look at this, and this is his interpretation of that. As for a school university art project course. And so you had you got a Kiwi doing another a Kiwi character out there, and I put in the logo that there, show you how to look on a comic book cover and everything. You can see the him working on it. So he's got the soldier, because he's a former SAS soldier captain. And then you've got his body armor and stuff, because he's just a normal human. And so, kind of like a vigilante. It was done as like a, my reaction to a situation that happened in my life with like a vigilante. So I love Punisher, right? Punisher, Batman, Constantine is my top 3. So, you got Andrew Harris here interpreting, Henry Rollins, which is like kind of inspiration for the look, because that's what Shane came up with in the end. And so like I said, I make it as easy as I can for the artist, because I don't want the artist running around kind of trying to imagine what I'm coming up with, because
sure.
My head and it's easy if I just go, here's a photo, right? Now I do that really constantly.
I think the plus side is that you are letting your, like, Italian, is he Italian?
Yeah.
The Italian illustrator actually have some creativity, because I think the worst thing is, because I've heard about artists that work with Alan Moore, and Alan Moore apparently gives you giant scripts with every single detail and what he wants in every single panel.
Yeah. And
I've heard lots of artists actually quit working with him, even though he's one of the most famous writers in comics. A lot of them don't want to work with him, because you get no you don't really get much of a creative input.
Right.
You get, like, I've heard a story. Have you ever seen the Hard Boiled comic by Frank Miller and Jeff Darrow?
No, I haven't.
I'll bring it up. Let me just.
He had a story, and he gave it to Jeff Darrow, and he basically had it written out. He gave it to Jeff Darrow, and Jeff Darrow started doing the pages. But Jeff, when he was reading the script, was getting a different vibe or a different feeling from it. Like, he wasn't understanding the script how Frank was thinking of it.
Right.
So when he handed the artwork in, Frank Miller was like, shit, this has changed half the tone of my story. And it's changed it quite a lot. He's even like changed some of the characters quite a lot. But that was how Jeff Darrow was reading it.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, Frank Miller's shit hot at the moment. He's one of the biggest properties in comics right now. Jeff's going to have to rework it. He looked at the artwork several times, and went and changed his script.
Yeah.
Because he loved
Interesting.
the artwork.
Okay.
He liked the artwork so much that he didn't give a shit. And he's like, I can work with this. It's still basically my story, but I think he's actually added more depth to it.
I mean, if that's the same artist that's done that cover, I mean, yeah, that's a hell of an illustration.
You should see the interior artwork. That's
Probably some interiors.
the interior artwork is insane. Like the cover is nothing.
What else has this guy done?
He's done the Shaolin Cowboy.
Yeah.
Shaolin Cowboy. He's basically worked in Hollywood. He's done a lot of. He designed half of The Matrix.
Whoa. Okay.
He's designed a lot of Hollywood stuff too, because of this comic book and some other ones that he did. He did Big Guy and Rusty.
That must be frustrating because Frank Miller's an artist, isn't as well.
It's friggin' own style. Like
this was when Frank Miller was still drawing too, but he wanted to work with this guy. So the thing is, because he wanted to work with him, and when he saw him,
look at that.
When he saw him adding more depth to the story than he actually expected, he changed the story. He didn't get pissed off and throw a tantrum. He's like, "This is awesome." He's actually he's added something new to it. The story is still basically the same, but he's added extra layers. And he just went with it.
Wow. Yeah, that is. I mean,
that stuff is all inked and it's all coloured too, all by Jeff Darrow, I think. Like, I think he drove people insane with the detail.
Yeah.
Because after that, he got offered lots of other jobs set in cities and stuff, and he was turning them down because he's like, you could piss off them drawing that many people.
The one thing that I've consistently heard is like, I can't be dealing with this. And the industry is like cityscapes with or city scenes with lots of people. But that's probably one of the more involved ones I've seen.
Yeah, it's a double page. So it's,
But the whole comic looks like that. He's not lazy on any page. But
what's his name?
Jeff Darrow.
Jeff Darrow.
He wanted to draw that comic like that. So it was his. He basically blames himself.
Gotcha. You know what? I have seen this guy. He's done. He did Big Guy and Rusty.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, this guy's something else, man. This guy's
apparently in between the comic work, he has done the Matrix films and other stuff.
Jesus. So much detail. Just. It would be. I would love to see like a sort of a time lapse of him drawing. He must be just. This mark making must be crazy.
I mean, it's years of skills, and I think that's something that I always try to say to people. It's like this is years of skill. People have like got a unique style because of years of skill. Like he's got a unique style due to years of skill, and it's easy for people to just think like. It's just art and, anybody can do that. But there's a bit of skill when it comes to actually getting anatomy right, getting placement of stuff right, way you create characters and stuff. So I'm putting up one this is the first page of issue 2 of Robot Nation, which is like 20 pages in this one and then 20 pages in the next one. It's a 40-page story. So, when I get sent this page here, I'm going to enlarge it for you, but when you see this page, this is supposed to be a mothership, and it's supposed to show you there's vegetation growing there. When I've described, I said like there's parts of this where they're living in it, all these quarters and stuff, but there's also, vegetation. This is what he came up with. This is Francisco, right? And I gave him photos and photos and photos and photos of all these different things, of futuristic ideas of people, of like spaceships and stuff. And then I said, here you go. And so and the same thing with this, like with the cryogenic was that like from Ripley, aliens,
like the
frozen state
thing.
The frozen state and stuff like that. I gave photos of all that
stasis thing, right?
And I just said, hey, this is the cryopod, and he gave me this page. Now I had to change my script to suit him. I had to actually limit the amount of text I use into the space that was provided. We talk about like how working with the artists, you go like, well,
I remember you talking about this area where you had something else in mind. I mean,
yeah,
take me through that, because I mean, did he say, "Well, look, I've got this idea and I'm going to pull the trigger on it," or did he just show up
no,
with
no,
this
no.
page?
So what he basically said to me was like, hey, here's let me just bring up the most recent script so I can show you. And he said, am I on the right track? Right. He shows it to me and he goes, am I on the right track? I said, hell yeah. Right. So I want to bring up the script so you can actually see what I wrote in the script, because I think a lot of times people
So did he send you like a layout or something first?
No, not even that. Not even that. Right. So, when I do it like this, I go like, cover, credits, I'm timing what, know how many pages I'm doing. So no most, this is the thing. It's like no most like, so you got all this text here, but then that's to describe it. This is just to describe. Now you got all this text here that should be on that page. However, I'm going to bring you up that page so you can see the page, how I changed it, because I realized that I could slim this down and rewrite this better and make it more crisp. Now that like basically a lot of times when you're writing a script, you're just trying to throw out as much as you can out there because it's your first draft. And a lot of times with this one, I was constrained because he just finished and he needed me to get another script so I could carry on. And I was constrained and said like, okay, I'm just going to rush this and give it to you. And now that he's done the page, I have time now, to go and actually re-gig it, right? Do a second draft on it.
Right.
And then, kind of like, let me bring up the page.
I was just thinking that's pretty ballsy if you have sent him a script and he what he's done is sort of a big divorce from what you originally sort of outlined. As great as a page as it is, I mean, you could have very well turned around and gone, "What the heck?" You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of get like some more detail on that, on kind of how that sort of worked. I mean, that's a great page, but
yeah. So when you see that, right? So here's what I'm talking about, like how I slimmed it down. Right, I slimmed up the writing down. I added it to text. If you notice, there's going to be sorry, but I'll bring it over here. Right, so we're on another TV screen here. So if you look at it, there's only I'll count the actual caption scene. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that's that one, right? So now I'll bring over the next the actual script, and I'll show you. Is it the one? Or is it that one?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see which one it is. It's that one. So you look at the script here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right.
Oh, if he's done a good job describing it, you can.
Yeah.
It's redundant to repeat it twice.
Exactly. And so not only that, that's only got one because of what I've described. That's only one panel supposed to be on there, but he's given me 2, and I'm happy with that, right? Because at the end of the day, we're about creating art and a partnership to create great art, and from a partnership to create great art, you got to have a bit of leeway for your creatives to go, hey, here's what I'm thinking of the page. What do you think? And short as answer is hell yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of an illustration. Yeah, that's a hell of an illustration.
What he didn't change the story at all either, did he?
Exactly.
So it's it works. He's not changing anything that will be important to the plot.
Right, and that's the most important thing. Is like actually not changing. And I'll bring up I should have brought this up so you could actually see the actual page, how I finished it as a letterer, right? Because I do all the lettering myself and design work. So here we go. So this is the layout of the page. And he's going to ink it and stuff. But like you can notice here, where did I think I lost my? Give me one sec. thought it was my mouse. Here we go. So, you know, so I actually went and then rewrote that, right? The second panel, because that panel is not supposed to be there according to script. But according to the artist, he saw that. And he gave me what I wanted, but more. And so I'm going to go as a writer and change that, right? I'm going to then introduce you to the character because the character is there now, right? So this is a chief engineer lies, you know, cryoslleep. So now I can tell it a bit more up there, you know, more complete. So if you look at the scripts, because, you know, Earth Date 3081, the Milky Way, you know, NZASCA, which is like comes down here, you get to learn that it's the New Zealand Air and Space Aeronautics. You know, we don't have one now, but of course we'll have one in 1,000 years.
SpaceX.
Yeah. So, you know, so you go over 200,000. So I needed him to make a ship that would house 200K people and, you know, and would have like, you know, all the stuff in it, you know, like they're growing friggin' plants in it because, you know, it's got to be about provide, you know, oxygen, food, all this, because what are you going to do with 200K people, you know? And just the layout, you know, this is what I like, the fact I say, like, influenced by 2000 AD. Yeah, like, I mean, the magic of 2000 AD was like you just went and had all this futuristic dystopian, you know, really well, you know, places. You know, you look at stuff like Zenith, and then you cross over. You got like Chopper on a, you know, on a snowboard, like not a snowboard, it's like a surfboard.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got the very bad stuff like the, you know, with the Wastelands, right? With Chronicles of Wasteland, with Shane's work. You know, when you look at like
they had what
the
Deadlands.
Deadlands. Yeah,
Redlands, Redlands,
maybe like Radiator Lands. Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's you're creating new product, but there's nothing new under the sun. You just interpret it and you bring your own concept and ideas to it. Like that, you know, that whole cryogenic, that's from Aliens. You know, when they come out with you know,
it's from a lot of sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, but the thing here is like when you come out and you see her in you know, and you know, I think, you know, light t-shirt and pair of panties, right, or whatever, because that's how, you know, Ripley came out, and it's kind of like, you know, you can't imagine sort of, because when in that situation, you don't want so much clothing on you because you got all these chemicals and stuff, and you got to really think about that. Like when it comes to creating this, you want a bit of realism. For me personally, I do want a bit of realism when it comes into my fantasy, you know, imagination things, you know, because like you know, there's not only that, but I want to add to the background of it. I want to create a history. Why are they friggin' here? You know, what are they doing on this mothership? How do they get to this mothership? Why are this crying? So you got to go backstory and you go, hey, this is a bit here. And a lot of times what I do is I write a lot of captions and a lot of ideas down. And then later on, when I'm actually getting the artwork itself, I'll change it. I'll slim it. And this is what's happened here, because I realize I'm just throwing my brain out onto there, because while the artist is reading it, they get an idea of what's going on in my head that I can't explain. So I'm using words to convey. But the other thing here is like, when we're talking about research, is that like we mentioned earlier, like I send them photos, right? So I will send photos of what I'm thinking in my head. So here's something, right? This is because Ruth is an engineer, right? So I want to say, you know, I'm going to kind of show the special area because it's important to that. So I go and say, you know, here's one of many images, you know, of an operating room in the future on this ship. However, that's just one, right? And I'm just Googling it, and that's just getting examples to the artist to say, hey, you know, this is something, do a mashup kind of thing, you know, and play around with it, because I don't want my interpretation of it. I want to, you know, have a look at it and come up with your version of this thing. So I don't just send one image, I send several, so that they, you know, that Francisco personally, you know, because he's working on this one, that he has freedom to come up with something, interpret his own creative way. Because when you try to, like, you know, what you're talking about, like with Alan Moore, saying this is a rigid thing to stick to, even though he's a legend.
He's had a lot of famous artists quit.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to work with people if you're rigid in your thing. And I think I've learned over time to be fluid. And
well, I write and draw my own comic, and I've usually write down the script or the basic script and the basic plot all clean and cleared. And I've gotten to the final where I've done the artwork and I've changed my own script and I've written and drawn it. So I know exactly what I'm doing, but I'll see something in the image or on the page and I'm like, that could be worded differently because it suits it more than it did before.
Yeah.
I think you've got to be open to changing it. Or whether that's killing your babies. You got to be open to killing your babies.
That's it. Yeah. You have to, dude. I'm like one of the worst things to meet an artist who doesn't do that. Like they're so rigid. I mean, I remember like I just went in on stage and I was telling a story and talking about how crazy stuff, and then I came off and the guy goes to me, "Don't you feel scared about letting somebody else work with that?" I'm like, "No." He said, "I feel so scared." I was like, the whole point of friggin', I like to keep it for myself. I do it for myself. It's like the whole point of creating something is to share, right? And if the point of me creating art is to share my art. And over time I've learned to kill certain things because it didn't work. If you're so precious, you get stuck on that, and you need to let go. And I've had to let go, right? I mean, I've had to redo an entire comic book after spending $550 printing it to realize that I'm shit at it, and to get an artist to actually go and redo it because I didn't write it the way I should have. It was supposed to be an action superhero book, and I was writing it as like a drama, a thriller thing. It didn't work. He said it was too many words, and I realized it was too many words.
Wasn't just me.
Yeah, and but that's the thing, because it's a difference between doing a web comic and doing an actual physical thing.
And I mean, I get Rico to read my scripts, and I also get. I mean, Rico's got like 2 garages full of comics. He loves comics, so he's versed in comics. But I also get my partner Michelle to read them, who doesn't care about comics at all. And what I do is I just wait to see if they spot things that don't make sense, or if they just go, that's a bit weird. Would they really say that? And I'm not stubborn enough to be like, no, that's how I wrote it. It's got to be that way.
Yeah.
If they give me a critique and it makes sense, I change stuff. Because you've got to think in the long run, what you know in your head and what you're trying to achieve isn't clear to anyone else. Right.
That's the thing, right? Like someone who's just picking the damn thing up isn't going to understand what's in your friggin' head.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about like that's what I think is between like the artist and the creative. The artist goes, here it is, and the creative goes, how do I make it better? How do I make it better? How do I what do I need to change? Because we deal with an art is on the wall, but what we deal with was entertainment, where we for me, I'm speaking for myself here, that I'm trying to draw in a response and take a person on a journey. Our art on the wall isn't that. A painting isn't that, because all you're doing is looking. When it comes to comic books and film and stuff, you're connecting, you're taking part in that experience, because the director is telling you, this is why I did this shot here compared to the musician thing. Why we put this, one of the greatest, soundtrack guys who did like.
I think I get what you mean. I guess art on the wall. There's probably a comment more on modern art than anything. I would say sort of a single kind of painting is trying to convey a feeling and an emotion. There is a story there, but it's not sort of long form, right?
Yeah. If you're taking like my Mona Lisa, right? I don't know Mona Lisa's backstory. I don't know Mona Lisa is a character in something. Whereas when a comic book comes in, you go, oh, it's an actual, this is a character. how do they get the logo on the friggin' shirt, right? When you look at Superman, right? Why did Superman have the S on him? Oh, that's because that's his house. His blanket was on there. It was wrapped on him. Now he's got a cape that Martha Kent made for him, right? Kind of thing. And now he's wearing the cape, and she's sewn up his costume. Now you got that. Painting doesn't do that, right? And I think that's a difference between what I enjoy between comics and
I'll post some of this. I mean, this is sort of I mean, this guy's name is Gustavo Dore. He's a very old artist. I think he's sort of running around like the 1700s or something. But, you know, same sort of thing. It's like, man, maybe this isn't the best example of it, but, you know, single sort of illustration, but there's enough there to sort of go, you know, for you to meditate on it. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, who's this character? What, you know, she's sitting on the moon. I don't know. She's sitting in the sky. There's some sort of bat type figure there. So you're sort of, it takes a little while to sort of digest the illustration. You know what I mean? So it certainly conveys tone, and you can kind of imply a story. You know, I mean, I'm guessing
you're bringing it to it. Whereas like with comic books, it's you know, when we're writing, we're telling you the story along with it. So we kind of like need to be more clear, you know, because like we're telling you what else is there, whereas the painting's like, this is the painting, and now you have nothing else but that one image to go off. And I think like for as artists, and I mean like as comic writers and creators, we're trying to draw people into, you know, even though we give you the images, we also are trying to give you with the text to, you know, learn more about, you know, it's like a journey between the art and the storyteller, and the artist and the story, you know, writer, because we're trying to marry it up so that you're not left to any sort of like questions, but we want you to have questions. What if, you know, what's going to happen next, man? You know, but it's kind of hard to describe. But comics are an amazing medium. You know, it's one of the greatest.
Certainly as a creative, you have, you know, in terms of, you know, I don't think there's any other medium where one person can put like, you know, can create something world class that sort of, you know, has super high production values, and you can do everything. You know, you are essentially the writer, the actor, you know, the costume designer, the background designer, what have you. I mean, that's what you know, I'm a fan of comic books, obviously, but as a creative, you know, it's sort of that and maybe books. But books, you know, you don't have control over the visuals, right? You are describing it, but, you know, at the end of the day, the person could just, you know, be seeing something completely different, and there's a magic in that. But as a creative, you have sort of absolute complete control over kind of the visuals, the writing. You know, it's you have a lot more kind of control of the journey, you know, like you said, that you're taking the reader on.
Like Shane was saying when you were asking earlier about he's doing the camera shots. You know, he's visualizing the film shots. I like the, you know, storyboarding it so that he is showing you the angle, right? That, and the light, where the light's going to shine, where the shadow's going to fall, where the what is it called, the the like flow on the
drapery,
you know, all you know, wrinkles, the way the actor's gonna, you know, well, you know, the character's gonna have the hair, the scars, all this thing he gets to do as an artist. And I think that's a great thing about the artist. It's like, you know, unless the character, you know, because as a writer is going to tell him, okay, this is how what want to look, and then wide shot. That's it, wide shot, or close up. That's all I got to describe to the artist. You know, wide shot, and he's going to put in whatever he wants.
I've heard, I can't remember which comic artist said this, but he basically said the reason he loves comics is because he loves movies. And they're like, what? There are two different things. When you get into making movies, he goes, well, when I make comics, I have an unlimited budget. I have all the
Right.
and I have the best screenwriters that I want.
Yeah.
And I have no studio interference.
Right.
So he goes, basically, I am making my dream projects in a comic book form.
That's it.
Nice.
No, no limits to how much money gets spent on.
You could have you could have 200 monsters in your horror comic if you want.
Speaking of script writing, shit. Sorry to interject. So you mentioned before how you sort of because this is something that I'm sort of struggling with at the moment. You mentioned before kind of what's the best way to articulate it? Sort of going back and forth between sort of the storyboards and the script writing. I wanted to kind of ask what you guys thought. You can work on a script, until forever. So how do you sort of know when it's done? How do you know when it's sort of when do you know how to take it out of the oven? I guess.
For me. It's not done. It's not done until I read it, like all the lettering's done, or if the coloring's got to be done, until all the editing's done, and I'm happy with going, hey, can you have a look at this? Is there any mistakes on this? Because here's my final thing. Then comes back to me. I go change it, edit it, any little, whatever I got to change, and then I'll put it out, and then I'm done. Because I can't continue doing it again.
So you need sort of you're after kind of some form of external feedback before you go. Yes,
you do need someone to actually look over it, because you miss shit. Like, I think that's the worst thing, is like missing something. Because here's the deal: we had like Incredible #1 back, quick start, everything. It went to because it goes to the printer, then comes back and gives you your proof, right? You get the proofs of it. And one of the pages had friggin' lines on it, like frame lines on it. And do you now let it go out? Me, I go, no. I'll change it, spend a whole day between the colorist and me, because, you got to get rid of the lines, because the colors have been put on. It's finalized. So I had to go back, and over 2 days, actually the weekend, because I had to go back to Hugo, who did an amazing quick, got back to me. And then I was, it was Christmas, left it for a day. I had to get rid of those lines and put the original artwork on, because I made a mistake having the wrong artwork going. Out of 32 pages, I had 1 page do that, and I had to go back to the printers. Now it's delayed by 3 weeks because of that one mistake. And all of us missed it.
But what about the script side? Because he's talking about the finished idea,
sure.
not the technical.
But
not something you missed visually.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. Like, even like, you never know if you're going to miss it. So with the text side, like, I get, my Kevin, who's illustrator, looked over the artwork. I mean, sorry, over who's illustrator inker. He looked over the PDF of it, and changed, said, hey, this doesn't work here. This grammar, you should use this word. Cool. But the other thing he also picked up on was the origin, which really shocked the shit out of me, because I had missed it. The very important thing about what it could happen if kids picked it up, because it's an all ages books, and read that, how you got your superpower. And I went and completely rechanged that, because I realized that was
So how many versions do you think there was?
Oh shit. Must be about 5.
Yeah. See, I have got a different kind of mantra to that. And because, like I mentioned way before, I'd wanted to do a comic for 20 or so years and never did it.
Sure.
I always wanted to create the best thing possible.
Yeah.
And come out with a fantastic piece of artwork and something that will blow people away. And there's a guy on YouTube called Jake Parker.
Oh, yeah, Inktober, Jake Parker, yeah.
He's a pretty good illustrator. I don't think he's the best out there, but I like him more for his mentality. And what he basically said was, nothing is ever perfect, and nothing exists until it is actually printed.
Yeah.
So he's basically like, don't sit there trying to do your magnum opus. Don't sit there trying to do the Catcher in the Rye and all these big epic things. He goes, just do some damn work and print it. He goes, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's never going to be as good as you hope, but it doesn't
Mm.
exist until it's actually out there.
Mm.
And he said
Right.
the weird thing is he's got artwork that he's done 10 or 20 years ago. He thinks it's okay. He's got artwork he's doing like right now. He thinks is way better.
Mm.
He said some of his biggest selling art books are the old ones. So you don't know what the public's going to like anyway.
Mm.
You don't know how they're going to receive it. It's basically like, don't be too precious with it. And I thought, because he goes, that's the only way you're ever going to get something done, is to not be like, obviously check it for typos, obviously get your friends to make sure it makes sense and there's no glaring plot holes.
Mm.
But he's like, you're not going to create the perfect comic ever, because nothing is ever perfect. So just finish it.
Like I said,
So how do you balance that? Because don't let don't let perfection be the enemy of good. But how do you balance that between sort of, I guess, that notion and making sure your work is sort of
nothing's ever going to be perfect, man.
Yeah.
all it can be. Not perfect, but surely there is a line between sort of just get it out there and I've been working on this for many years, and this is the 20th draft. You know what I mean?
Like I said, I showed my scripts and stuff to Rico, and as you saw with my A3s, I did some of my other ones were smaller thumbnails, but the last one I did was all A3s, basically to scale. So I could show it to them. I could show it to him visually, and he would just go through it and go, like he'd look at pages and goes, "That reads perfectly." He's like, you could change it, you could do this, but it reads perfectly. So it's like, if it's clear and it reads, that's the main thing I'm after. I've got a couple of pages at home that he's made suggestions on, and a couple of suggestions I didn't agree with, but one page is going to be altered quite a bit because I agreed with it 100%. But I've kind of given up. Like it sounds bad when you say given up, but I've kind of decided.
Right.
It's not given up. It's like you have to have a limit of how much you're going to. Because I could spend 2 years drawing every issue.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or I could spend 4 months and actually get the job done, and have it exist, and then move on to the next comic, which will hopefully get better.
Yeah. It's really. I think it's a real choice whether do you want to get it out there or not. You're never going to be ever happy 100% with anything you do, and you got to learn to not be that precious about it. For me, I'm like, I just want work out there because I don't have that much time to live, right? Think about that. Like really, like time is like there's a limited time that we exist on this world, right? So do I spend like I've always like I started doing comics in 2007. I got my first comic actual printed in 2019, right? The first 6 issues over the 2 year period of that.
It actually gets easier the older you get,
Yeah.
because the more you realize, just do it. Otherwise, you've got nothing.
Yeah. And then last year we did our first superhero comic that we meant that self-published that. Cool. Decided to get an actual artist to do it, and now that's done. Now we're looking at number 2. And now we've got Robot Nations coming out. Now we've got Templeton almost finished, like about 3-4 pages away from that finishing. Sci-fi, horror, mature comics, NSFW covers and all this, and so many others. Like I want to put out 5 number 1s this year, right? But here's the deal: if I am being a perfectionist on number 1, how the hell do I get all the others out? So I can't be so precious about it, and I mean, maybe I'll look back and I wish I'd done that. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I mean, you can change a word, you can draw something differently, but if it tells the story and gets the point across, then you've succeeded.
Yeah.
And I also remember another piece of advice, and I can't remember which illustrator said it. It was a famous comic book illustrator, but he said everyone always looks at their favorite artists. Like you go, oh, I love Beasley, I love Arthur Adams, I love Dave McKean, and they always compare themselves
That's the worst
to the
thing.
greatest. And he's like, that's the worst thing you can do, because eventually you're going to draw in your own style.
Yeah.
And if you compare yourself to people who are fantastic, you might never get there and you might just quit. He said, and he goes, find a comic, and he goes, not like an indie one, not some, he goes, find a big published comic, like a Batman issue or a Superman or something, that's got absolutely shit artwork. Find something that you think, this is horrible, how did this get printed? And realize this guy got printed.
Right.
You can do better than this. And this is a popular comic. This guy's had a job and probably done several issues. And you know that you can do better. And it's like, he's like, don't compare yourself to the best. Find someone that's average or rubbish that has actually been printed. And he goes, if they can do it, you can do it.
You can too. Interesting.
He's like, yeah, because everyone always compares himself to the best. Like if you pick up a guitar, you want to be Jimi Hendrix. It's like, well, you're not.
Yeah.
But as long as you can play a tune, you can probably still make music.
Sure.
So talking about bad art, I want to find that one that you wanted from earlier, right?
Rob Liefeld.
No. Rob, I don't mind Rob. I've never minded Rob. You know.
Well, there you go. He's got terrible anatomy, and he's made a career.
Yeah.
Doing comics.
Yeah, and he's a legend. You know,
and
like
people don't.
I feel like he was made for that '90s era. You know what I mean? That sort of extreme kind of, you know, early '90s sort of stuff. You know, if he was sort of, if he came out now, he might struggle a little bit, you know, with the technical side, but he came out at the right time, and I can't knock him. He's like you said, he's super successful. He's come up with some great characters.
Carry on. Rex, I'm just looking at something here.
No, you're right. I didn't have anything else to add on Rob Liefeld. I'm not that much of a fan. I was going to ask you guys about just the New Zealand comic book scene in general. I mean, I'm kind of in a weird position where I've sort of, I guess, I've not produced anything myself, but I've been kind of orbiting around it. You know, I've gone to sort of conventions and I've sort of picked stuff up every once in a while and what have you. And I'm part of groups on Facebook and what have you. Well, I just wanted to sort of get your kind of thoughts on sort of how the health of the scene at the moment, how you guys sort of, what do you guys think of the New Zealand comic books community, where you see it going? Not to ask too many compound questions, but just sort of get you, sort of start a conversation about that.
Well, I consider myself very new to it because I've done work for other people, but for my self-published thing, I consider myself, I've only been in it for a year and a bit. But I do think that how you described yourself, floating around watching, I think that is the New Zealand comic thing.
Yeah.
I think we need more people doing than watching.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of great ideas.
Yeah. And I think it's the same thing, right? You look at like America, go, oh, there's great work. It's already out there. What's the point of me adding to it? The point is, it's your voice. It's your thing. Nobody has your story to tell, right? Like if you look at our, every single post that we put out with for YouTube, it's got like plungecomics.com, right? It says under there, our story is our way. That's what I want to say. It's my voice. It's our voice, our way, not America's way, not Europe's way, not Asia's way, not manga's way, not Korea's way. It's our way, right? So it's our stories, and everybody's got a story in them, as they always say, right? Everybody's got a book in them, but it's how you decide which way you're going to tell your story and how you're going to convey it. You can tell your story any way you want, but at the end of the day, it's up to the people to decide if it's going to work or not, if they're into it or not, if it connects to them or not. And so with me, I'm always like writing lots of different genres and trying to do that. But a lot of people get stuck and they just think, you know, I can't compete with that. You know, I can't compete with this and I can't compete with that. You don't need to compete with anyone but yourself. At the end of the day, it's your strength, it's your story, it's your art, your creativity that you got to put out there.
You don't need to compete either. You need
Yeah.
to actually be different. So,
Sure.
because I mean, I like seriously, when I printed my one, I was thinking, I hope I sell 10 or 20 copies. And once I sold a few copies, I was happy. But you know, now basically I've got 2 or 3 left of the first issue, so I'm very happy. But
Not bad,
the
man.
main
Congratulations.
the main thing was to do it for me first.
Yeah.
I mean, this is New Zealand comics. You're not going to be making a living off it.
Yeah.
Not for a while.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a passion project, and it's got to be something you want to do. So I think that's the reason why there's a lot of people that say it and then they don't do it.
Yeah.
And
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because on the flip side, I remember a character putting something in a New Zealand comic books group on Facebook, asking about her colors. Her name was I don't know if you're familiar with Rachel Smythe, and she was going, "Hey, I put this together.
Olympus.
Yeah, what do you guys think?" And I was like, "Hey, this is pretty interesting." And then the next time I see her name, she's a New York Times bestseller. And I was just like, dude,
Millionaire.
Actually,
Webtoons.
actually 3 times bestseller.
Yeah.
my
She's done
goodness.
3 volumes. They've all been bestsellers.
Yeah, I've actually reached out to us, you know, and say, hey, come and have a talk about it on our Kiwis and like Friday nights.
But again, she started that for herself.
Yeah.
And
Right.
she's obviously the success story because she started it for herself, but it's worked.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of other idiots that did things for themselves too. One was called Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, and wait, who's the Harry Potter writer?
Yeah.
For her son, for her friggin' son. I mean, I created Incredible for my niece, who was 4 years old at the time.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I did a female superhero, because my niece. I said to her, if you know what, I should do it. I never even thought of doing a male superhero first. I just thought, I've got my niece. She's the first of my sister's child. Would it be cool if I, you know, and they got to name it. The family got to name it. Incredible. Right. I said, do you know, well, if you had a female superhero character, what do you want to call it? She goes, Incredible Girl. Right. And then we ended up being Incredible Girl because, you know, incredible, you know. And
Gotcha.
so that's been always why it's been an all ages book, because of that. I could have just changed it into like a R18, whatever. But no. It's for that little girl, 4 years old, way back in 2007, who's now, you know, 20 something.
She's been waiting a while.
Yeah, and it's taken that while. But, you know, we had a few trials at it. But, you know, I mean, what if I decide, you know, I'm not good at this shit. Who am I to be writing a superhero story and all that? And it just sits there. The thing is.
But I mean, like Simon Beasley said he wasn't good at drawing.
He's freaking king.
Well, no, when he started at 2000 AD, he said he was one of the worst illustrators there. And he's like, what can I do to stand out? I know, I'll paint my artwork.
Yeah.
He did it just to stand out. He did it to stand out and to be different from the others because he said they could draw better than he could.
Yeah.
And so his difference has paid off quite well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, going back just personal, completely personal level, even if you don't become Beasley or Rowling or anyone famous, the satisfaction of actually doing something that you talk about and have thought about for years is fantastic, because it's no longer in your head. It's no longer bugging you. It's no longer that I wish I did this and I wish I did that. It's like you've done it.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
And if you like it, you'll do it again.
And let me just grab this here so you can. So I used to own these books because back in like 90s, right? Simon was a huge, you know, basically was a huge influence on me.
Wow, look at that.
You know, and like 2000 AD, and I actually painted a Simon Beasley A2 size on a wood, like what's that, MDF? Yeah, MDF, like painted it as part of a project where you like see how the wood, like if you put wood in water, like an MDF in water, and if, you know, like expands and stuff, how would it change the art? And that was kind of like something to do with sculpting. But like, you know, this is one of the greatest British books in the world. Not only, you know, British, but comics in the world. You know, he's inspired so many people through it. The Han God is one of the greatest comic book series, art-wise. And who wrote that? I don't. Let me just pop it up
This
here.
is an old Kiwi guy. I mean, I'm not that
So
has
Pat
like
Mills, right?
style. He works in that art store on the North Shore. But
Right.
and I remember him doing a demo at Armageddon of his painting, and it was just like, you know, I bought some ink pens from him one time, and then I saw him like knocking out this like super high tier fantasy painting. I was just like, geez, man. I forgot what his name is. He's put out some books too, some comic books. I forgot what they're called. He had some butcher book. I can't remember, but yeah.
So here's something to think. Like, so this is Massimo Belladinelli, right? Benedelli. So you go, well,
actually Mike McMahon.
It's Mike McMahon. Oh, the cover.
The cover, yeah.
Right. So you look at this and you go, oh well, Simon's better. Why the hell is he Simon? You know, Pat Mills is not using Simon on the cover of this. But you know, that's the difference about, you know, having so many different interpretations of art out here, and you know, Pat Mills creating the Han God, and then having someone like, you know, Simon come out and say, hey, you know, by trying to be different, has added so much to that friggin' whole thing.
Well, Simon tells a story just like the Jeff Darrow one, where he said he got his first script, and he goes, I don't want to draw that. I don't want to draw that. I don't want to draw that. So he painted what he wanted, and he was meant to be doing it in inks and washes. He goes, no, don't want to do that. Painted it, handed it in, expected to get fired. He thought, this is going to be a short job at 2000 AD because I didn't follow his script. He's been here forever. I'm new. Hands the artwork in. Pat Mills looks at it, hands it around the office. He's like, oh shit, they're gonna tell me everything I've done wrong, tear me a new one. He said Pat sat down, changed the script, and then they printed it.
Dang, wow.
So they obviously like, you know, I'm open-minded enough to just, and that's the thing, like that again goes with the it'll never be perfect.
Yeah.
Beasley thought he had done it wrong. Pat had handed him a different script to start with. They end up just throwing it together anyway and changing everything to make it work, and people loved it. So it's like I think you just have to just do it and release it and
see how it goes.
Put it out. Like, I mean, like you're basically just throwing it into the world, right?
Yeah.
And seeing what sticks.
And there's so many people that someone's going to like it.
Yeah. Seriously, you know, I've seen work out there that I'll never want to like touch. Yet there's a people love it, and they'll pay money for it.
Well, I'm going to say something quite controversial because I'm not a fan of Jim Lee. I think he can draw really well, but I find his artwork boring,
repetitive,
just boring. I just find it he draws people so perfectly, and so like he is technically a fantastic artist.
Yes,
but I find his artwork is so staged and so stiff, and so it's like pinups. Every panel's a pinup.
That's it.
So I don't actually like it.
For those who like pinups and like for covers, like that's why I would buy it. I buy it for the cover and not for anything else.